smoke if you didn't shower when you got home, then I'm consenting.
What was that, Judy?
Wait, say that again.
I was gonna say, as a woman, when you can still smoke in bars, when you got home that night, if you didn't shower before you went to bed, you'd wake up and your hair and the pillow just like stunk of cigarettes.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a jean jacket and it would just smell all the time. It would just absorb every bit of smoke. And,
When I lived in Sunset Park, I lived near a bar called Irish Haven, which was famous for, they had a scene from The Departed filmed in there. And after midnight, depending on which bartender you had, you could smoke. So you would just be like, you would just light up, and if nobody yelled at you, everybody would light up. And then the bartender would put out plastic cups of water. And I was there one night until like 6 a.m. It was weird because at 6 a.m., the bar got full again. The sun was coming up. The bar was filled. It was the strangest thing. It was a walk back to my place. So it was like a 10-minute walk, but it was worth it if you could smoke and drink at the same time.
I can top all of you because I bartended in a 24-hour bar in New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
And I worked a graveyard shift.
Vegas?
In New Orleans. I worked a graveyard shift from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. But I'll save that story for another time.
All right.
Judy had the talent for finding these bars when I first met Judy, and they would be in like the weirdest fucking places and have no seating. So it'd be like Judy would be like in this place that like had a doorway, a bar, Judy, and one seat. And it was like in between the Port Authority bus terminal or like under the Triborough Bridge or something like that. Like, you know, and I would go and visit. It was so weird.
Checkered past.
Checkered past. All right.
Those are stories for another time.
Well, you know, like to warm up. I hear Pacino likes to warm up before his interviews.
That's good.
Yeah.
Today we present Judy.
Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about one of my, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite, but I do remember when I saw this movie. It's from 1976 called Burnt Offerings. It is directed, produced, and written by Dan Curtis. And it's kind of weird, and I liked it. And it's one of those typical late 70s films, and it's no wonder I like it. I'll say my personal favorite horror film is The Shining, and there are definitely some similarities in these movies. So I look forward to hearing what you guys say. For viewers who would like to watch, if you want to stop and watch the movie before continuing while we tell you all the spoilers, you can see it currently right now. It's on Prime, on Amazon Prime, unless you have one of those access to like the dark web and you can get it for free somewhere.
And I think it's being offered as like a $3.99 rental, if I remember correctly. You can also purchase it if you feel so.
Yeah, and it's got a great cast: Karen Black, Oliver Reed, Bette Davis, Lee Montgomery. Who else? Burgess Meredith.
Burgess Meredith. Oh God, what a guy!
He's always great. Okay, so I liked the movie. I will also say that while I like the movie, I watched it again with my husband recently, and he was like 10 minutes in, his comment was, "This is a terrible movie." But then halfway in, he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see what happens next." So what I like about it is that it's weird. There are some points where you're like, this is so bad. It's like so bad, but it's so good at the same time. And so I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this movie. Who wants to take it away?
I'll go. So my mother's review, because she watched it with me after it was over, was, "This is an awful, awful movie." Just in that sort of old lady.
But she thought The Tenant was great.
She, I think she appreciated the European artistry of The Tenant. I don't know what goes on in her head. But this one, she was like, she was just, she was invested kind of in the beginning. By the time the hearse showed up, she was kind of like turned off. So that was my mother's review. Now, I saw this movie with my dad on TV, like on Channel 9 in the middle of the day. And I just remember the swimming pool scene. Well, there's two swimming pool scenes, actually. There's a swimming pool scene where Oliver Reed tries to kill his own kid by roughhousing with him. And then there's a scene where the kid tries to impress Oliver Reed, who seems to have had a stroke and can't move, by swimming in the deep end of the pool, which everyone has expressed, don't swim in the deep end of the pool. Just like there's the room in The Shining. What's the room you're not supposed to go into?
237.
237. Yeah. So there's a thing about not swimming in this movie on the deep side of the pool. So he swims in the deep side of the pool, and like, you know, a hurricane starts, and he starts drowning. Karen Black has to run down like 4 flights of stairs because this house that they get for $900 for what, the entire summer?
The entire summer.
Is gigantic. And so I remember that from my childhood, the drowning of this kid. And I'm gonna really try and let you guys talk, and if it comes up, you could do a podcast on each of these people in this movie, because
there's a lot going on here, and I feel like we can go in a lot of different directions. I just wanted to say one thing before, and then ask somebody to give a synopsis, or in essence, like what's the basic outline of this movie. One of the most interesting things is that this movie was based on a book of the same name, just as the Kubrick film, The Shining, that Judy mentioned in the beginning, was based on a book. And both The Shining, the book, and the film, both actually, let me rephrase that. Both the book and this film that was based off of the book were both written before The Shining. And when you know that going into this, it makes you think that Stephen King probably ripped this off, and that Stanley Kubrick also probably was at least influenced by it. The movies are very different, but the concept of a home that you rent for the summer that ends up attacking your mind and body, or at least some of the inhabitants' minds and bodies. I mean, that's a pretty novel idea, and it seems too similar for that to be a complete coincidence. So,
along with the family, of the similarity with the family.
Yeah, and the fact that the experience of being in this home initially makes Oliver Reed's character feel like he has an uncontrollable violent urge, and then he's really remorseful about it, and then he wants to leave because of it. And then you have similar show of remorse in Jack Nicholson's character in The Shining, when he first hurts the boy, and then he gives him this really weird apology. Anyway, somebody want to give a brief synopsis? Judy, you want to give a brief synopsis of what happens in this film? Or
basically, there's a family, a mother, father, son. He's probably about 10 years old, I would say. Go visit this couple who own a house. The house is kind of beautiful, but falling apart at the same time. It looks like who's maintaining this house? Things are broken. All the plants are dead. This is probably going to be the longest synopsis ever.
No,
so they go visit this house. It's this weird couple who talk about the house. She loves it. They offer them the price, which seems too good to be true. How can they pass it up?
Well, let me just interrupt. The couple's a brother and sister.
Yes, that own the
okay.
house. Yes, and then when they say, she asked the mother who's coming, and she says, "Oh, well, it's also his aunt." And they perk up and say, "Oh, well, you like taking the elderly," and then they let them know. They say when she says, "Oh, the price is too good to be true," well, they say there is, what was that? There is one.
It was a motorcycle.
Okay. There is one catch. Our mother lives up in the attic. She never comes out. You need to feed her 3 times a day. You bring the tray up. And it's very kind of odd, but they're like, okay, let's do it. And so then they move in with the aunt. The only the wife is allowed to go upstairs. The character played by Karen Black. She's the only one who has the key. They leave her the key, and they also mysteriously disappear. The brother and sister, they just take off. So when they get to the house, there's nobody there. So it's already ominous there. And then once they move in, weird things start happening. The mother seems to be spending a lot of time up in this room. She never quite meets the mother. She sort of seems entranced by this music box and all these old photos on a table. And so she doesn't want to leave the house. The son wants to leave. Everybody wants to leave the house. And the father is, I'm doing a terrible job at this.
No, you're fine.
No, you're doing great.
So then the wife wants to stay, the husband wants to go. He's also having these weird flashbacks back to when his father died, in this creepy hearse and the creepy driver and a creepy Joker smile. And so he's sort of being tormented by the house. And everybody wants to go and the wife doesn't. Now there comes a point where the father, there's like a near-death experience with the son, and they're like, who did it? Spoiler alert, the aunt dies. Every time somebody dies, the house sort of revitalizes itself. So it gives it, it sort of subtly or not so subtly lets you know that the house is sort of consuming them and their energy when they die. And slowly it gets worse. Now there is a point where I will just say, I noticed it went to a little bit of the Evil Dead when the father grabs the son during the storm and he tries to take off. The tree falls, the vine like grabs them, and I was like, oh, this is like the Evil Dead. Again, before the Evil Dead was shot. So I wonder if there was a reference to Sam Raimi there. So basically there was this big epic battle in the house. Do I give away the ending or we'll save that for later?
Yeah, we can save that.
Yeah, let's save
We save it and I'll
You did
talk
a good
about
job.
I need to work on my synopsis.
No, that was really
No, it's hard. It's hard.
The weird
You're doing better than Wikipedia. Doing better than Wikipedia.
It's a very difficult film to give a synopsis of. I mean, it's like, if I had to do it in like one word, it's like this crazy vacation home consumes people, and like you said, and
It's a haunted house vacation movie.
Oh yeah, haunted house vacation movie, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things they have a handyman. They have this ridiculous Southern handyman who has no credits on IMDb beyond this movie. So maybe he was eaten by the house too. But he's bringing in a plant that's supposed to be dead. And then Burgess Meredith looks at it after the family has agreed to stay, and there's greens, like it's starting to get green in the plant. And that's your first clue that something bad is going on. Or if you're more optimistic, the house really appreciates that this family is moving in so much that the plants are going to start to bloom. It's like the whole house is a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And draining them.
Yeah, it starts off with them in the car. It's very similar to The Shining. It's the family in a car, optimistic about this house that they might spend time in. And it's the same, the mother and the father in the front seat, the kid in the middle in the back, the boy. And you would think, and I was wondering, because they have this ominous music, so that like something bad is gonna come. So I almost in my mind was like thinking, what if they just like put like some upbeat music and like confused everybody? But I just said, like right off the bat, I was like, oh, it's like The Shining.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I gotta say that if for no other reason, I love this film because yet again, Roger Ebert gave it 1.5 stars. Just like he gave The Tenant 1 star, and the things that irritated him about The Tenant were the same things that irritated him about this movie. He's like, oh, it's so predictable. They're going to go into a home and that it's going to be haunted and bad things are going to happen. It's like telling somebody who doesn't like vanilla ice cream, It's like, yeah, when you taste it, it's going to be all vanilla-y and it's like, you just don't like horror movies, dude. Like, get over it,
And this also
horror movie.
This falls into the category of Roger Ebert also not liking any horror movie where kids are victims. He has a no children victims rule. He doesn't He doesn't
Yeah,
like Aliens because of that. He doesn't like a lot of movies because of that. He can't enjoy them.
Yeah.
Can't lay back. So I don't know if he mentioned that in his review, but this
No, he didn't mention the kid, but
Okay.
I'm sure that's like, yeah, you mentioned that he has that bias in the past. I thought it was very, very strange. But one of the things I got to tell you, the thing that really struck me the most about this film was how painfully good the acting is.
It's amazing.
It's like, and you know, I don't know how they did it. Like they're just maybe I'm not that familiar with Oliver Reed. I can't think of other movies that I've seen him in or Karen Black. They were so unbelievably good in this. It's almost like way better than they needed to be. Maybe so good that the director was like, "Hey, oh, whoa, why don't you save that for like, you know, Shakespeare?" Like I don't know, like it almost brings tears to your eyes how sincere the acting. Like he just wants to get out of there. He just wants his family to be safe. He just, it's. I'm not even going to go as far as to say that it was overacted in any way. It was just really shocking to see that kind of feeling, that level, those layers of skill in a movie like this. I've never seen that before.
They also they have a lot of moments that they don't say anything, which a lot of times I found that actors are like, well, what am I saying? But there's so much conveyed in not speaking, and they have a great chemistry between Oliver and Karen, where there's so many moments, and she just sort of like switches on a dime so subtly. It's really like beautiful to watch. And him too. He like there's all these like little nuances in their performance that at first you think, like you mentioned, like, is it overacting? But it's just that there's so much going on underneath the surface that it really leads you to, which is why at times you're watching it and you're like, what is happening? Something's happening.
That is true. They did perform the falling apart of their marriage very well. I really did catch that, because every scene was like he gives an olive branch, but she's going further down this path, and he takes it as a sign, and the same like the other way around. It's like, well, his drinking is getting a little too much, and she doesn't like that, and then it goes on from there. But this movie it laid out rules for itself and didn't really stick to them. And I guess it raised a lot of questions, but then, I don't know. I just
Similar
got
to
54%.
it's similar to the criticism you had of The Tenant.
I suppose, but it's like, if you're going to give me a logic, that's great. I'll believe you. If you build on that logic, that's awesome. I'll go with you. But when you just do stuff because the story kind of needs to happen, it gets a little muddy for me, because then it's like, well, this happens because the story needs it to happen, as opposed to it coming from a natural place in the narrative. And it got 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think that's a fairly accurate score.
From the people or the critics? Or both?
I don't know. Oh, Christ. I don't know. I
What was
didn't
the critic?
write that down.
I thought audience was something like 26% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I suppose they would rather watch The Shining, I guess. Here's a question. Bette Davis is in this film.
Yeah.
Legend. She plays Aunt Elizabeth. Whose aunt is she?
She's, I think, I want to believe that she's Karen Black's aunt.
Okay.
Even because it makes it more interesting
Oh,
that Oliver Reed is taking care of her in the end, because Karen Black is so obsessed with taking care of the house.
and also what Judy said, the plants go crazy because in beginning the third act, Oliver Reed is like, the hell with this, we're leaving. He tries to leave, it's a storm, and then the plants wrap him up and they try to get him back and stuff. So it's not the house, it's the estate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All
We
right.
also have several photos on the wall.
Well, oh, wait, on
different
the
time periods
yeah, on
of
the
the so
piano.
the camera's far back, so it does show the entire estate. It shows the house on the estate with the gardens. And in the final scene in
Right.
the movie,
That's-
there's a voiceover of the brother and sister that are like, "Oh,
See,
it's
like I just don't like
mother's
that. If it's
back."
the house, it's the house. All right.
No, Sean, it's really simple. You have this mantle. Check it out. There's a mantle with a bunch of photographs on it. Those are photographs of the food that fed the house
It fed
so
the
that it
mother.
could be renovated.
Yeah, that regenerates the mother.
That's it.
Right.
This is the house. It's like, let's say, you know, when you go out to eat at a restaurant, and or maybe more girlfriends do this more than guys, and the food is really nice looking, so you take a picture of it and you put it on Instagram. That's like what the house was doing with the photos of it. It's like, look at this guy
Okay.
ate so that I could renovate myself.
According to the movie, that's illogical because
Why?
that's a lot of people. So you don't want to. That's a lot of people. The camera pans all the portraits.
Yeah.
And when it did that, I was like, oh, I got to make a mental note. And then in the front, it pans again later on in the film.
Okay.
Then when Karen Black gets absorbed and she becomes the mother, she's already aged. So it's like, okay, so do these people get absorbed? Then there's a portrait, which nobody takes a picture of these portraits. They're just there on the thing. Then what, that person ages out? And then they got to get somebody,
You're throwing too many things together, like putting them on the same levels.
Clearly, someone needs to read the book.
There's
Right.
different kinds of food.
No, well, if it's in the book, it ought to be in the movie. Go ahead.
I do have a
Abram, you were
question with
saying.
that. And I don't know if I'm like way off track here, but when I was just looking up the movie, it refers to Judaism. And there's something called burnt offerings
Yes.
as part of Judaism.
We have super
They're called
Jew here, so
burnt-
he'll explain.
Burnt offering.
So yes, explain. I don't want to even say that I understand it. I have some stuff on Wikipedia, but that's just, it talks about
Okay.
different offerings and the meat that goes up to rid of evil thoughts or something like that.
Okay, so there's different kinds of burnt offerings, and they're sacrifices. In the ancient world, you know, priests. I was having this conversation with my friend here earlier today. The whole concept of a priestly class and sacrifices was ubiquitous in the ancient world, and it usually involved humans and weird sex rituals and stuff like that. And then the Jewish people were the first ones to get this, you know, there's one God and he doesn't want you doing that stuff. He wants you to be good. So now you're the priests, you're no longer going to sacrifice humans. You're going to sacrifice animals for sins that you commit and to atone for them and for other reasons as well. I mean, for things that you did that, you know, also to bring prosperity. There were many different kinds of sacrifices, burnt offerings. Some were sin offerings, but they weren't all for sins. They were for all different reasons. But they were basically like people used to do really bad stuff, and priests used to be really manipulative in the name of trying to create prosperity or trying to create peace, and like the idea that you'd sacrifice humans, like, you know, at a certain point, people were like, you know, it's time for us to evolve out of that. So that was another phase in that whole thing. So the burnt offering was, usually the firstborn, you know, ram or whatever the case may be. But the whole idea is that like this is kind of a sick name for the film in a sense because I guess it's about human sacrifice. So I mean, that registered in my mind that that's the only place historically that term is referred to. It's an English translation of the Hebrew, the burnt offering.
Which is weird because the guy who wrote this, Robert Marasco, is Italian and went to a Roman Catholic boys' school.
Well, they have our Torah too. I mean,
because he taught Latin too. This guy, he didn't really write much. He was more of a teacher, and he taught Latin at Fordham University.
Well, they
And
were
he's
all,
from
these guys are
Europe.
all into human sacrifice. Look at what
Yeah.
they did with their guy, you know?
That's a good, yeah, that's a good point. I just thought that was weird. Maybe he knew about it or like whatever else. I just thought that was a strange little thing.
Yeah, I
Also,
don't see
it's
how there's any kind of Jewish theme going on in this movie. It seems weird pagan stuff, if anything.
sure. Okay, so
So the
Yeah, I
family's
just
the
gotta-
burnt offering. The family is the burnt offering.
Family's the burnt offering. It's like, you know what it is? It's like all those other people were like, okay, but they needed the right kind of sacrifice. And the right sacrifice didn't happen until this perfect family came around with the kid and the dad and somebody to replace the mother or whatever.
here's the question. Okay, so the Burgess Meredith and his sister lure in families, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so were they always were they always getting people to come over?
Yeah, I think they kept trying to do
They were
stuff
always
to
okay.
fulfill the prophecy.
So the people also replenish a brother and sister?
Yeah, that was my question too. Is-
Okay.
Do they
So there's
age
that.
or how long has this been happening? And then
Because photography only happened in the 1850s. So in those pictures,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? So only since then. And they all right, that's all I'm
I
saying.
remember when I was watching it, I was thinking that, like, first of all, it's a bit peculiar that like this 80-year-old brother and sister have like an 85-year-old mom upstairs or whatever. Like, it seemed like they were too old to have like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here's another question. So they get a deal renting this amazing house for $900 for the whole summer. So for that deal to happen, does Oliver Reed, the father, have to do all the landscaping? Because he does.
He does, and
Nobody-
that guy Cooper leaves.
Mhm.
But still, isn't he Cooper's the groundskeeper?
Yeah.
He didn't do anything because the house was a mess. What was he doing? He's a groundskeeper, right? What was he doing? And where did he go?
Maybe he's one of those groundskeepers who like shows up.
Maybe.
When he's got a lot of different houses to service. He kind of fixes your
But he was
mom's
staying
sink.
there.
But then it drips.
That's
3
what I'm
minutes
saying.
later.
I'm
He's
just saying, if
down
you're gonna
the
have a
road
logic,
already.
stick to it. And oh, by the way, a lot of landscaping, a lot of it. It's like that dude played by Dub Taylor, the groundskeeper, didn't do anything. He was probably growing marijuana in the woods or something. Because it was but then that wasn't agreed upon. It wasn't like, okay, Oliver, we'll get you a deal, but you got to do all the landscaping. He just did. Oliver Reed just did it. And did they also clean the pool out?
I think that Oliver Reed wasn't necessarily obligated to do it. I think he was just so sexually frustrated.
He is the most sexually frustrated character in the history of film, except maybe for, what was that movie we saw together, Isaac, Bob and Ted and Carol and Alice,
Oh,
and what's his name? The dark Elliot Gould finds out that his friend is like having threesomes and doing whatever, and then his wife that night like gets him hot, and then she doesn't want to continue it, and he's like, I wish I had a dog, a ticket for a walk right now. Like, but that's funny. But Oliver Reed is just like, get me the lawnmower, get me something that like I can't. I am so sexually frustrated.
All right. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because it just seemed
I
kind
like
of.
the way he played it.
Why did Oliver Reed? Didn't Oliver Reed get catatonic at one point?
Yes.
Yes.
Why?
well,
After he tried to leave, isn't it?
yeah, I think that kudzu, or that weird the what was it? The branches that
Vines.
the vine,
Vampire vine.
the vampire vine sucked his vital energy out of him. He was trying to escape, and he was so, I don't know.
They sucked his vital energy through his.
Well, the
through
whole
his
house
skin.
is sucking everybody's life out of them.
But do you see what I mean by the movie doesn't follow its own logic? Do you see what I mean? When I say
completely
that.
understand why you're saying that.
All right. Okay.
I just don't see why that matters.
Okay,
This
all
kind of
right.
I mean, no, look, back up a second, back up. Would you say the same thing about The Shining? Because I feel like I could make a similar argument about that. You don't like The Shining.
No, I do.
Well, what about that weird woman who's like really hot, and then all of a sudden her body's crumbling apart? And
Well, sure. Okay, I'll explain. That what Scatman Carruthers said in the kitchen to Danny, that the images in this hotel, or they're like images in a book, they can't hurt you, and that they mess with you, but they can't hurt you, and that was part of the images.
So you needed to
You
be
know what I'm saying? But
explained. I mean, we're still
I
operating.
need a logic.
No, the logic is that this is a fucked up haunted house that sucks the life out of people.
Okay, all right, okay.
What's wrong with that? And you don't need
Nothing.
You don't need Scatman Crothers to explain it to you. It's almost better in a way because
And it doesn't want anyone to leave until it's done eating.
yeah.
Basically. Until
But how would you feel? How would you feel if your ribeye started walking off of your plate before you even got halfway through it?
Yeah, but even then, it wasn't a slow suction of eating like the family, because the family was A-okay. They were just fine. And they were all packed up and they were ready to go. And then Karen Black says, "Oh, I forgot one thing." And I'm yelling at the TV at this point. I'm like, "What are you? Just get in the car!" Anyway, she goes in and then she enters the room.
That is the classic movie, the moment in a horror movie where it has to be played a certain way or written a certain way, or it becomes like, I know we shouldn't split up, but let's split up. Like in a slasher film.
Yeah.
Let me give you another perspective.
But here's the thing. But here's the thing. So the house needs the person to enter the room for them to be absorbed. So everybody entered the room, and all those people on the picture, all of them entered the like the room. So this was the only family that were about to leave, but didn't, and entered the room. That's all.
No, well, Karen's picture wasn't on the table. So all the people who were on the table were sacrificed. Now I found something online that references.
But in the end, they were on
novel.
the table.
Except for Karen.
Hold on,
Yeah.
I hear what Judy has to
She's
say.
on. So it says in the novel, this is from an article from horrorhomeroom.com. It says in the novel, he explains, the author, Robert Marasco, that the implied sinful desire to withhold anything from the house must be burned from the woman who would be mother. And it says mothers are the most often who sacrifice for their families. In this case, the mother sacrifices her family. So what I'm saying about the photos is that when they scan the photos at the end of the movie, Karen's photo is not there, which means that she is the new mother, but she wasn't, I guess in a way she wasn't sacrificed, that she sacrificed those three people. And I feel that in the whole movie, she was slowly getting possessed by it. And that's why she was going like in and out of it between her love for her husband and her new, because it's like the music, I feel like, that she kept playing. She would just sit there and listen to the music. She'd fall asleep in the room. She keeps referencing how her hair is starting to turn gray. You know, she's like, oh, I guess I must have inherited that from my aunt or whoever. She's talking to Elizabeth about it. Elizabeth is starting to deteriorate as well, but she's going crazy, where Karen is sort of like, almost like having this weird, like, I almost want to say sexual relationship with the house. She's just sort of like, ooh, you know. I love how your all faces just went like, she's like going to the room. It's like she needs to go to the room, like she's getting her fix in the room. I don't know what's going on, but I think it's where she's slowly starting to take on the mother and has this like power over the family.
Yeah.
And she's kind of caught in between the two.
Another way of looking at that would be like that with the other characters, is that like they're playing their role in the story of this house. And also, Sean, you talk a lot about the internal logic, but have you ever been a house before? Do you know? Have you ever been a house?
Been in the house?
A house.
In a house.
Have you ever been a house?
Been a house.
Yeah. So what makes you an expert on how houses, you know, hunt and feed off of people?
I think we need to do like a long improv, 24-hour
no, I'm not saying.
Sean is a house.
No. I'm not saying the house did it improperly. I'm just saying that the house gave mixed messages because it's not the house, it's the estate because of the vine.
Okay, the estate.
That's all I'm saying. Well, see,
Okay,
no, but the room is the center.
Yeah, it's like the
Because
holy
that's
of
mother's
holies.
room. Because that's mother's room. That's like the
Yeah.
that's like the holy of holies is
Yeah.
mother's room.
You know what I'm saying? So like you know how a cat will hunt a mouse and like play with it, and it's
Yes.
like that's kind of what they're doing to the house is doing that to these people. It's like, oh, I'm gonna scare the shit out of you, and you're gonna be catatonic for a while. Then you'll come back, and then eventually I'll kill you and eat you.
Okay. All right. I just don't.
The house
I just
gets
don't get
excited about the hunt. You know, you wouldn't understand because you've never been a house.
Right. Also, how there was some suspicion on Bette Davis going into, was it Davis
Bette
going
Davis
into the
goes and
son's
sees the
room
mother.
and smacks him around though, or oh no, they put it on the furnace or something, and they almost burned the house
She says
down.
she didn't do it.
And then there was like some suspicion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mother becomes suspicious.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And the way Bette Davis plays dying, like Bette Davis is pretty old. This is like one of her final movies. The way she's like holding herself up and moaning as the chauffeur is coming for her is amazing. Like a young actor couldn't do that physicality. A lot of them. It's an amazing performance by her.
And by the way,
Yeah.
that reminds me of something else. So the flashbacks of the chauffeur in the house, are they in concert in messing with the family? Because it seems that only Oliver Reed had flashbacks of the house. Nobody else had flashbacks. And it was, at least to me, heavily implied that was something from his childhood. So is the house bringing something out in him in his childhood? Or was it the house that was putting those things in his head and he was reacting about how, what the hell were these images in my head of this evil chauffeur? And then he's finally there because then the image, because his Oliver Reed's flashbacks or visions of this evil chauffeur were happening, but then in the end, the chauffeur's there in the house. So were they flashbacks or were they visions from the house?
Too. That's the only moment that another person sees what he's seeing.
Oh, right. So
that was like another thing of like, oh, okay. But that's, I believe going back to earlier, I think, and I'm not 100%, but they mentioned that it's his aunt. So she would have been at the funeral.
No.
I don't know.
Wait, Bette Davis character. That's the aunt, right?
Yeah. But
that's Oliver Reed's aunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm wrong.
See, that doesn't make sense.
No,
he has a British accent and she doesn't. So
what?
You're gonna explain that? No, I'm just saying circumstantial evidence. They're all adding up here. That's all I'm saying.
As long as we're on the chauffeur, do you know who the chauffeur is?
No.
That chauffeur is Skinny from Unforgiven. The guy.
Anthony James?
Yeah.
Oh,
remember Skinny?
He was the killer in The Heat of the Night, 1967.
In The Heat of the Night, too. So it must have been a bad
killer in The Heat of the Night.
He must have had to pay some bills that year. Because he has a pretty great career, except for showing up as a made-up chauffeur.
Wait a minute. Wait, back up, guys. The chauffeur is a memory of Oliver Reed's from when his father died when he was, or one of his parents died when he was very young, right?
But then why is those visions in the house? Why are they appearing in the
visions?
house?
The house is just fucking with him, and different people in different ways. It makes it so the kid grounds in the deep end, and so
and she dies.
What?
The aunt sees the chauffeur though.
Mm-hmm. Right before she dies.
So the house fucks with the aunt and makes her share in his vision. Why? Like,
I'm getting more confused.
The house is the first principle of this film. Everything goes back to the house.
Okay.
If I may go through, because you could do a podcast on everybody in this movie. If I may go through some things about some of the actors in this.
Please.
Oliver Reed is could have been one of the greatest British film actors ever, but he really, 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 really loved the sauce so much.
Right, and he was also a nephew of a famous British director.
He was a
named
nephew of Carol Reed, who directed.
So he had his in. Go ahead.
Yeah, he that's how he got into Oliver. But Oliver Twist, the musical. He if you go online, Oliver Reed made up a joke video of his funeral where he talks about how he died and how his funeral went, and he's pretending to be a ghost. What's so eerie is a couple years later, he was on the set of Gladiator in Malta, and he drank something like 36 beers and like 18 shots and dropped dead of a heart attack.
Jesus.
And they had to change, and you can see it in Gladiator quite clearly. They had to create CGI to finish Gladiator because of his death.
Jesus.
I
remember that.
Wasn't he a drinking buddy of
Keith Moon
and Richard Harris?
Keith Moon, he had a rivalry with Richard Harris about who was a bigger drunk and who was a real man. His real drinking buddy was Keith Moon.
And they met a little bit before this too. They were probably partying around.
They met for Tommy.
Which was the year prior.
But so let me ask you, Seth, if it's true that he was such a great actor, he would have been the greatest actor if he wasn't such a really, really bad drunk. And Richard Harris was such a great actor, except he was really, really, really drunk. And Al Pacino was so great in The Godfather, except he was really, really maybe the best actor who just drunk.
Well, I think that there is a period where fantasy is very accessible to the actor and becomes real through drug use. And a lot of actors are susceptible to it. However, I will say this. Oliver Reed is not a transformational actor. What makes him interesting as a British actor is that he's much more like the American guys that he grew up watching, like Marlon Brando and Spencer Tracy, than guys like Laurence Olivier, James Cagney. He would list his favorite actors, Lee Marvin, and they were never Brits. And his grandfather created RADA, and he didn't go.
His grandfather created what?
The Royal Academy of
Dramatic Art.
And he didn't go.
So he didn't need to. He didn't want to.
Yeah. Another thing about, and it's all over the internet. I mean, you can find all his Oliver Reed stories, and I don't want to spend too much because I want to go to other people, but Oliver Reed grew up during the war. He was a kid during the war, and his mother ran a bar for the RAF. And the guys would drink and joke with him as a little kid, and then the sirens would go off. And then they would go into their planes drunk and die fighting the Germans. And he remembered in one interview, he said, "What happened to Freddie?" And everyone would get quiet, and someone would go, "We don't talk about Freddie.
You don't talk about Freddie."
and that's how he grew up. There's so many
talk about Freddie.
There's so many talk shows with him drunk. There's one right after this movie with Shelley Winters dumping a glass of either water or vodka over his head because he gets into a fight over feminism with her on the Carson show.
Well, and she kept on interrupting him. I saw that clip for this, and she was pretty annoying. I mean, in his defense,
drunk. I think she's drunk too.
Oh yeah.
I think she's a little tipsy too. Anyway.
Okay.
Other Oliver Reed facts. Oliver Reed had a tattoo of the talons of either some kind of bird, an eagle or a
British raven.
British raven.
An English raven.
An English raven over his cock. And
on his penis.
On his penis. And Ozzy Osbourne, you can look it up, has a story about it being revealed to him in a bar. And he kind of seems relieved because he thought Oliver Reed was so big, like a bear, that he was going to beat up this little tattooed freak. And instead he was like, oh, you have tattoos. Do you want to see my tattoo?
I have a tattoo.
And he pulls
Want
out
to
his
see
cock.
my tattoo? and Ozzy was like, I wasn't really looking at it, but yeah, it was like a British claw. He's like, all right, man, you got it. I just think that's funny. Like who could be more English? They had a little
Like,
battle
took place
that
in
day.
New York, right?
Was it? I don't
I don't
know.
know.
Fun fact about Karen Black for you, Judy. She played Mother Firefly in 2003's House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yep.
There you go.
She has a long history of horror films.
She does. Yeah.
She does two. Does two movies with Dan Curtis. One is called Trilogy of Terror, which is amazing. It has a little freak African doll with a knife in a box running around going rah, 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 and trying to cut her up. And she's a different character in every one in Trilogy of Terror. She's also the woman who Jack Nicholson says, hold the chicken in between your legs in Waitress in Five Easy Pieces. She's the girl who's with Fonda and they do acid in the motorcycle movie.
Easy Rider?
Easy Rider. She's an Easy Rider.
Easy Rider.
Tripping and crying through and all that. And yeah, she's interesting. And she also has a quote, I think, on Wikipedia where she says of somebody.
Wow, she really did like horror films. The Hitchhiker was like one of HBO's first series. It was an anthology horror, and she was in one of them. Yep, 1987. Good for her. I did like her. I thought she was very, very charming. Very good.
She's in a movie called Killer Fish with piranhas that has like great, fake fish ripping people up and blood in the water. It's a good one. It's a good one. And Karen Black said of somebody, but we don't know who, New York training, how can you study with a guy who isn't an actor to learn how to be an actor? And in another interview I read about her years ago, she said she used to have to walk she did do Broadway. She had to walk from Broadway to like 9th or 11th Avenue where her apartment was way back when it was like the 60s or 70s. So she would pretend to like be fucked up, like really like mentally deranged, and do this walk so people would leave her alone. So I thought that was great. And that's all I got on Karen Black. Burgess Meredith is a brilliant actor, best known for The Penguin, but he was blacklisted.
Well, I like.
Wait, best known?
Best known for The Penguin.
Wait.
By a certain generation.
Best known for Adam West's
Rocky,
Batman. And what about Twilight Zone? What about Grumpy Old Men, by the way? Grumpy Old Men.
Time enough.
I don't know.
Best known.
People can comment, but I think for a generation, he's best known as the Penguin.
Okay. Coming back to the film, though,
Yeah.
is there anyone that disliked the film, or would
Besides Sean? No.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Yeah, it was great acting. The story wasn't there. The logic didn't make sense. What was up with the brother and sister, and why? Like, even in the story, why was there a brother and sister? Why not just one person? Why not three? It's
There's a brother and sister because there's something going on between that brother and sister. Like
he was in a wheelchair. All right.
Burgess is playing something a little weird. The sister might not be, but Burgess seems a little.
They both seem to have magic powers or something.
And also, here's
voices at the end.
I got a question here for you too. Why did they just want to get out of the city and rent this place?
I think they have to get to the Rosemary's Baby cult to see Baby Adrian.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm saying though. You think you like, oh wait, no, they're just making excuses. Oh, it's okay. Oh, sorry. It's like a pet cat just peeing on the carpet. Oh, the pet cat's fine. You know, she's problems. You know, it's creepy. Whatever.
You're saying that this is you're saying that this is a bad movie because it has all these problems.
Well, I'm just saying the logic. It's not logical. It doesn't go in a straight line. It doesn't go in a circle. It doesn't even do a zigzag.
I agree with you, Sean, but what I like is the actors have so much work to do that they make it work, even though there is obviously no through line by the writer going, really? You're going to the ice cream store. Don't tell anyone, but you're going to the ice cream. Like these actors are like, maybe we're going to the ice cream store.
If the movie was more logical and less absurd, it would be way worse. That's what makes it good. Like, have you ever read a Kafka novel before? Have you ever read The Trial? Have you ever read The Castle?
Yes.
Have you ever read America? Oh, forget about it. Have you ever read America? Talk about a book that doesn't make any sense.
No, I've never read America. I stuck more with the.
It's utterly absurd. You know.
Yeah, but at least with his, there was like a theme. Even in his short story In the Penal Colony, there was like a theme of like authority, you know, just like, I don't know, just like there was some sort of structure,
that was
you know, whatever.
That was like the mid-century modern world sense of isolation. This is the 1970s world sense of isolation.
Okay. All right. I
understand your position. I just don't understand how you can't love the movie, even if it's ridiculous.
I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's fun.
Mm-hmm. But
Hey, Sean, did you like Pink Flamingos?
No, I don't. I don't like Pink Flamingos. I don't like Gummo. I didn't like Kids. I don't like Gus Van Sant, by the way.
You didn't like Kids? You didn't like Kids?
No, I didn't like Kids. I didn't like Kids. I didn't like My Own Private Idaho.
The movie starts off with the line, virgins. I love virgins.
What horror movies do you like, Sean?
Good for you.
Great. What horror movies?
Great. I mean, great.
Nobody ever did that before.
What horror movies would you say?
That's true. That's true. Kids was monumental. It was. I do understand that, but it's just I cannot appreciate.
It's an accurate depiction of my childhood.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's cool.
Get that bone away from that dog because it's an accurate, depiction.
I just like for horror films that I enjoy. Nothing's coming to mind. Like the Haunting in Connecticut. I like the Conjuring series. I like As Above, So Below. I enjoyed that.
What about Freddy?
Yes, I enjoyed The Shining. I did like the first for the Freddy. I did like 1, 3. I liked all of them, but 2. I didn't like 2. I saw the whole Friday the 13th series. I enjoyed those. Jason 9 was really bad though. The rest I could and 5 and 9 were really bad. But the rest I enjoy stuff. I always make it a point to go see horror films whenever they're out in theaters. I always make it a point to go because they're very innovative in their filming techniques. B, it's also a genre with a lot of rules. So as a filmmaker, you got to try to skirt the rules or try to bend the rules to make it work for you. I enjoy that.
So
the whole Saw series.
You didn't find it thrilling when the house started shedding its shingles and got the really nice new ones, and the house just renovated itself? That wasn't exciting.
No,
like the climax of the film.
Not to me. No, because for me it was like, well, what else are they going to do? They can't do anything else because it's like, what are they going to? It's the house. It's the house. If you have any questions, the answer is it's the house. So the house, what is the house? All right, so just do this. If it's fucking pulsed like a Cronenberg, Poltergeist, it fucking shrank. Guys, that's good, but we're get it, life and shit, life.
No, I get it. Like
Sorry.
a Cronenberg is like you go to Peter Luger's for steak. This was like a really good dirty water hot dog to me. Like,
Yeah,
you know, like a good dirty water hot dog.
No, it was better than that. It was like a papaya. It was like a drink papaya hot dog from 86 Third Avenue with the chili on it and the sauerkraut.
The real Gray's papaya?
Brown
Or
mustard.
a papaya king.
Which is better, which is
I don't wanna-
tastier than filet mignon. They say so in their byline. Okay? That's what it was. That's what
I'm
this
just
was.
one thing that are they still 50 cents a dog at Grace Papayas?
No, fuck Gray's papaya.
Papaya king.
Gray's papaya is the bootleg.
Oh,
I'm talking about drink papaya.
Oh.
the original.
Oh, I thought it's
I
three.
apologize. I heard Grace Papayas.
Drink papaya.
So
On
now I
And at 86th and 3rd with the neon sign. My dad used to take me there after we played pool on the weekends. That was the shit.
that's cool.
That was
You got
the
it. All right. Oh
Right.
my God. It's just this
Anyway.
film. It just
You know,
doesn't
they-
make any
Gray's
It
doesn't make
papaya.
any sense.
Gray's papaya hires people to work there, and they get sicker and sicker as they work there. And the next thing you know, you're eating them. It's the haunted Gray's papaya movie.
I liked Sinister more than this. Insidious was fine. Oh God. It's just the 70s, they didn't really know how to do it so well.
What are you talking about? Like
Texas
Alien
Chainsaw
is
was
the
good.
70s?
I like that they leave it a little bit open ended. I think that there are a lot of references
Alien had a
to the
budget.
book that if you read the book, you might understand it more. Like I'm reading a little bit about people's synopsises of the book, and they do mention things. They talk about how Ben was close to a nervous breakdown. That's why they were leaving the city. So I think that the film probably just left out a lot that could have been answered. They talk about the clocks. They talk about the wife having OCD, and she was obsessed with cleaning. So she actually liked the fact that she had to clean the house. So I think that there's probably a lot more that the filmmaker, for whatever reason, chose to leave out, which I think is a
Okay.
strategy of its own. As I said before with other films, I like when it doesn't wrap everything, every question doesn't get answered and wrapped up in a pretty little bow.
But okay.
So that's my own
It's-
personal take, and I like it
That's
when it's
cool.
a little
That's
weird. And for me, I'll say that I was surprised by the ending. Like I knew that the house was making them crazy. I did not know that that Karen Black's character was going to become the mother. And what I also like is that I feel like there's a lot of elements in this movie that show up in other movies. Like even the mother, was this
That
done
what?
before Psycho? This was after Psycho.
This was after
The mother,
Psycho.
'cause that was
But I've seen
Yes,
that. I've seen
Psycho
that
was
Oliver Reed
1960.
fall onto a car in a lot of different movies. That classic, like I'm going out the window and I'm gonna land on a car, and there's gonna be somebody who loves me next to me. I've seen that in a lot of movies through the 70s and 80s. I can't mention any of
That was
them.
probably very shocking back then. Just the fact that they had that happen and he was right to his kid.
Yeah.
And then they killed the kid.
Mhm.
You know,
Wait,
they usually
what?
don't do that in movies.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Power
In this
falls on the
movie.
kid at the end too.
The child dies.
They all die, and all their pictures are on the mantle at the end.
Yeah.
except for the mother.
When the chimney collapses
Chimney.
on the sun at the very end, they all die.
And it's complete. And you hear the brother and sister talking about finally.
And then there's a
Mother's
new
back,
photo,
and
and
the
the house
house
is
is complete.
beautiful.
It's like they've been working on this renovation for like 1,000 years. Finally, they finished. It took like 50 people, and then they still had to finish the grandmother thing.
No, but you don't think they're finished, right? You think next summer there's gonna be another 3 poor jerks that probably check
See,
it.
that's another thing. You don't know. You don't know,
Don't know.
do you?
It's never gonna be
Because the
done.
movie didn't tell you.
Nope, but the book might.
Oh my
So if anyone's interested,
Yeah.
so we'll wrap this up. It would be interesting to see what the book synopsis is. Apparently, from what I'm reading online, the book is very similar, except for the ending, they say, and the pool scene is a little bit different. So there is some differences. But curious to hear what other people's thoughts are, love it or hate it, or maybe there's some things that you could better explain that we didn't quite get or understand. And once again, if you have any other recommendations of movies that people both love or hate, let us know.
Drop a comment.
Also-
Anyone else's final comments before we wrap it up?
Yes. Yes. This movie cost $2 million to make. The box office was 1.56. So there's that.
There you
2,
Better.
if you could leave in the comments what pop culture reference this logo is from. It's from a film from the 1980s. If you put it in there, I got a display box of Garbage Pail Kids I'll send to you. There you go.
There you go. Wow, we're giving stuff away for the first time.
Cool. I like it. Wait, so
Well, I have an extra display box.
I have a question. Seth, you're next. Do you have something in mind yet?
I do. Okay, it depends on how long people want to be tortured. Okay, because my first thought was Alejandro Jodorowski's Holy Mountain, which is a 3-hour film. Now you don't have to watch it all at once. You probably process it better if you don't watch it all at once. Or that this movie, other movie that I'm thinking of is called Caveman, starring Ringo Starr. And I brought my grandfather to this movie. It's all in gibberish except for one curse word. And it was the first time, I don't know if you've ever brought an adult to a movie and you find out they don't like the movie and the shame that you feel for dragging your grandpa. This was the first time that happened. So we'll talk and we'll decide between, cause I don't even know if Caveman is available, but I know that the Jodorowsky is. And I have other.
We'll discuss it, and if anybody wants to chime in, we'll get some other.
We all need ideas because we're all up to the point where we're flipping it. And yeah, cool. We're all bringing stuff in. Hi, children.
Any
Goodbye.
last words, Judy?
Any final one? No, I'm pretty good. I gotta put my kid to bed.
Sounds
Are you
good.
gonna tell him a
All right,
story
rock
about a
and roll,
house that
everybody.
eats people?
I think he fell asleep. We were that exciting.
Judy's gonna be like, once there was a house that your father and I rented for the summer with a swimming pool.
No, well, I can't watch. I watched the first movie Orca during the day, and my daughter watched the end. And then I shit you not, the next day we're sitting in the playroom, and she goes, "Mommy," she goes, "Where was that? Where was something like? Where was that ghost or that lady in the house?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "It flew through the window and was up on the ceiling, and it was black with white eyes." And I'm like thinking, like, she's telling me this, she's so like descriptive, and she's like, "It flew in through the window and it was on the ceiling, it was right there." And then I'm like, what is happening? I'm like looking at my husband, I'm like, "Do we have like a ghost? Like, what's going on?" And then I was like, "Oh wait, she watched Orca, and it was the end where they kept showing the dark with the white eyes, you know?" And I was like, "Oh, she's just traumatized from Orca. I can't watch these movies with my daughter. What are we doing?"
All you people who have plush killer whale dolls, send them here, and we'll give them to Judy's kid.
So now they're just date nights for these
Sure.
films are date nights for me and my husband.
Good. All right.
All right.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
I'll see you
Rock
guys
and
next
roll.
time from Hawaii. Peace.
Enjoy Hawaii.
Thank you. Take
Enjoy
care.
it.
Safe travels.